Hey guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions. Today, Sharon, is Tuesday, right? 4 p.m.
It is
BST. The weather's not good today. The weather's not good. Sharon, kicking off with you, quick introduction before we move over to Kian.
Hey everyone, my name is Sharon Evan and I am an Amazon seller, and I also am an Amazon coach, not guru, but coach.
Yeah, we're going to have to stop this. Student of the game, knowledgeable student of the game.
Exactly, and I am also a Seller Sessions fan. I'm a Kian Gulzari fan, and I have my own YouTube channel, Sharon Evan on YouTube.
Cool. And you, sir?
Kian's my name and sourcing's my game.
He's a poet and didn't even know it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Cool.
No, I mean, basically, if you want to learn about sourcing with Kian on Facebook, sourcing with Kian on YouTube, that's where you'll find me. And I'm here to teach any way I can about sourcing from China.
Cool. We're getting people coming in the feed now. You have a big fan, Sharon. Juan is saying, hey guys, big shout out to Sharon. Juan, what's cooking? Well, what about us two? Do we not get any love as well? Or is it just Sharon?
He loves you all too. He loves a lot of people. He's awesome.
Cool.
I wonder if he pronounces it Juan or Juan.
Yeah. Do you want to phonetically spell it out for us? Is it Juan?
I'm pretty sure
because I'm the butcher with the names. Basically, I butcher everyone's name, sometimes even my own. Right. What are we arguing about today? Supplier outreach. That's the one, wasn't it? So, who wants to kick off the pleasant argument? Sharon, you're the feisty one.
I have to get people to stop thinking I'm feisty. I'm not feisty.
You're fine. I love your feistiness. You got to work it. You got to live that feistiness. Yeah.
So yeah, everyone, today's subject was going to be something different. And then Kian's gone. Where's Kian there?
Oh, he's back.
Kian and I, we had a discussion about something else, and we're like, oh, we should turn this into today's topic. So, but Kian, what is today's topic exactly? Because I'm still.
Okay, so basically, we want to talk about how you reach out to suppliers and like how that initial communication goes. And there's like important stages that you have to realize that you're in and establish, because first of all, are you trying to validate a product? Have you got an idea for something and you're testing it just to see if it's cost effective for you to import? Well, the way you talk to a supplier will be completely different if you're trying to validate it versus if you know what you want to buy, and now you're basically trying to make the best impression, gain as much leverage, and build a decent enough relationship in order to get the best terms and best prices. And those sort of outreaches are completely different. So I guess we just wanted to talk about like the normal ways, and like the way that people are educated through like courses to reach out to suppliers is through like an RFQ template form, and you get them on Alibaba.com, and a lot of people also have their own templates and things like that. I've never been one for a template. I'm not a template guy. I just like to sort of state what I want, because there's like a lot of differences, right? Like on these templates and forms, they'll say, okay, like MOQ, and the supplier fills it in. Whereas like I was saying to Sharon off air, like I never let the supplier tell me what the MOQ is. I tell the supplier however many I want to order, and then they tell me if they can do it or not, and that's it. Yeah. But like as soon as you say what's the MOQ, then you're sort of, you're letting them dictate the terms. And I know there's like arguments for and against it, and it's important if you're at the product validation stage. Maybe you just want to find out what is the MOQ, but when you're actually ready to order and you only want to trial it and you only want to do 300 pieces, then you need to state. So what we need to establish is that, like, where are you in your journey? Are you validating, or do you know what you want? And based on what that situation that you're in, then you know how to begin that communication. I don't know if Sharon, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so the way it happened is that Kian was like, we could speak about this in the subject because, I don't really work with forms and I work in a different way. And then I was like, well, hold on, because I do work with forms and I do think that it's very important. And during like my coaching calls, a lot of the people that are listening to us are still at a stage that they're bringing in new products and they still need to understand the validation side of it. And, I have a flow chart that I made for the whole product research cycle, right? And it goes from the discovery to the validation, initial validation, to reaching out to suppliers, to understanding the shipping costs, to going back and checking how much everything costs, how much of the FBA fee is going to be, how much are you going to be able to sell it for, the worst case, the ideal case, the best case. And then, is the product actually going to be profitable, right? We're here to make money. We're not here to just bring out random products, right? We're here. So you have to understand if the product is going to be profitable. Now, sometimes what happens is that a seller may have, he may not even be a seller yet, right? He's a wannabe seller. He's not a seller yet. They may have 3 or 4 products that they need to validate, right? Or 3 or 4 products that they find as potential products to add to, whether they're already selling or they're new sellers. And then they don't yet know which one they need to go with. Now, there's many things that come into play here. There's, can you afford the product? Can you afford the cash flow of the product, as in further orders of the product? What is the lead time of the product? What is the tariffs of the product? You need to know all sorts of different things to understand whether you can actually make money from that product. So I was saying to Kian that I work in a way where I send out to, I want to make it clear. Today I have my suppliers I've been working with for years, right? I'm only now working on something new, and I'm only now reaching out to brand new suppliers. But because I do coaching, I've gone through this with many, many people. And the way that I work is we put out an email that is attached to it, an RFQ form. And then we grab all the information from all sorts of different suppliers. And from them, we start mining, and then we move on to the next stage, which is what I feel like is Kian's stage, where we start to build the relationship and we start the negotiation. Just because I'm asking a supplier for their MOQ doesn't mean that that's the MOQ that I'm going to agree to. I know how to negotiate. I'll be able to bring their MOQ down. And if not, I'll move on to someone else. Not everyone can you bring the MOQ down. There's different types of suppliers. So I was speaking to Kian about it, and I was explaining that when we're dealing with e-commerce and we're dealing with people who are selling online, not necessarily like licensing to like Walmart or whatever, we're dealing with people like you and I, Danny, then I think that it's crucial to have some sort of system in place where you do ask or have those same questions, whether it's in a sheet, like an Excel sheet like I have, or whether it's just in an email with questions. There's things that you have to have answered in order to even know whether you should take it to that next stage. Yeah. And that was what I was explaining. Where else, Kian's also on ground. Being in China, he's able to build something that I, for example, am doing everything from the other side of the world, right? And I think that's also kind of like also the beauty of, I'm not saying you shouldn't fly to China. I'm just saying it's the beauty of the world that we live in today, that you can do it from the other side of the world. But communication today, I have to get all the numbers in place in order to know whether this is a product that is worth my time to sell online. And also, can I actually afford to sustain this product? And I don't feel that there's another way of doing it if it's not through having some sort of RFQ in place.
Yeah.
That's
so
it. That's
can I check? So I agree, and I think it's really important to say that like both methods are right. You know, it's kind of just depends what works for you. There's not a right way or a wrong way of doing this. It's what you feel comfortable doing in your business. And I agree, if you're an absolute beginner and you want to validate products, you need to have certain RFQ templates so you can get the information in a clean and organized way as quick as possible. But what I would say to that is that a lot of beginners use RFQ templates, and if I'm a supplier and I'm getting like maybe 10, 20 different inquiries every single day and everyone's sending it in the exact same way, and let's bear in mind that a lot of people, when they get the results back, they never even follow up with the supplier because they just disqualify the product and they never reach out again. So the suppliers get a little bit frustrated when they're requested for all this information and then they never hear from them again. So my whole thesis is thinking about like, okay, how does a supplier feel when they receive a template like this? They probably think, oh, it's another beginner who took a course, who wants a lot of information, and then we're never going to hear from them again. So I'm not saying that it's wrong to have an RFQ, but I think that when you do an RFQ, you have to be like unique in your approach, and you have to have a message behind it to say, you know, we have this business, we're doing these products, we sell outside of Amazon, we're just getting started on Amazon. This is what we're considering doing. We've outlined your company. We think that you'd be a good partner for us because you have this testing. And I'm just sort of like making a connection to say that I think we can work well together type thing. and still saying that the RFQ is okay, but I just feel there needs to be a message, because I've heard the frustrations from the suppliers saying that we have 20 people reach out to us and we only have like one serious customer out of those people. So I'm trying to show that I'm a serious customer. I'm not discounting saying that's not the right way to do it, but I'm just saying there needs to be a message that goes along with it.
But I'm not a beginner and I still use it. It has nothing to do with being beginners. It's about bringing in new products. When you bring in a new product, you have to, because the thing is, Danny, before I give my long explanation, do you want to say hello to people?
Yeah, I've got a couple of things I want to just add, which I didn't bring up before the show. Let's do some hellos, and then I'm going to go into it, right? I want to share my screen on sync at the moment, because you brought up a big valid point, which we'll get into. So, hey, guys, big shout out to Sharon Evan, as we've seen. Kalad's here. What's up, guys? Juan says, yes, Danny McMillan, big hug to you as well. And it is pronounced as Juan. Yeah. Qasim says, hello, and hi, all. Nice to see you all again. Right. Sharon made a quick, I'm going to share my screen and show you some tools that we built for ourselves in-house. I haven't used them since last year because most of my manufacturing is done in the UK now, right? But that point that Sharon said is getting to a price point, is the numbers going to work for you? One of my frustrations years ago was that you deal with a load of suppliers, you start to bring the price down, and then when you get all of the data in together, you realize the numbers are not going to really work, but you've lost a few days, right? Whereas I'm like, how do I get there a lot faster to get a ballpark number and then work back off my numbers for quick calculations? So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm quickly going to show you a couple of Chrome tabs here. So let me know if you can see this.
Yes.
Right. So this is not a very pretty tool, but what this is able to do, you can just jam in there your sample sourcing, etc. Then you've got your fixed cost, and then this is shipping matrix, which I'll get into in a bit later. Then you've got your handling fees, standard price, discounts if you are actually working to discounts, net profit, etc. And then what happens is at the bottom, it's going to give here your return on investment and everything else. It's a quick, dirty way to get to the numbers that you want to get to, right? So I'm just going to close that. So that's one of the tools that I was using, because it was down to that level of frustration going back. Let me just stop that screen now. And I'll bring in.
I have the same thing. I have the same thing, Danny, but I also I've got my own one that I built with my formulas. Yeah. And mine has also 3 different price points. If I sell it at this, or at this.
Okay, so
right?
what this one is working out how much you can get onto a pallet, for instance. And obviously you can talk about containers later. There are calculators out there, but they don't really do them for pallets. So it gives you an idea of when you're working with your sizing, your maximum height, max weight, the pallet sizes and everything else. So especially on your first shipments. And then you can look at your prep center costs, your handling being sent into Amazon and stuff like that. Now, as again, goes back to what I'm saying, the reason that we designed that is because we wanted to not necessarily validate the product as the product itself in terms of its quality. You know, normally what you do is you reach out to everyone, you get all the numbers in, and then you find out whether it doesn't work. Now, there are some validation there where you want to know whether there's a good return on investment. So what we did is that there, along with some keyword search and stuff, within a few hours, you've got the general idea of numbers. Now, you know, when you speak to the factory, that isn't going to be the final cost per unit. But so you can add the variance in there. So let's just say you've done reverse engineered your competitor and you roughly understand their prices, then you can edge them up and down accordingly to roughly get to the numbers. So I just wanted to throw that in there because I think it's a very, very important point that you need, because you get bored of product validation, right? It takes long enough to go and find the products that you may like. You build this list and then you've got to go through and validate them all. And I think what happens is people lose enthusiasm, momentum. And I'm thinking, how do you keep this product still excitable? And it's something like that you can give to a VA to do some of the work, and then what comes out at the bottom when the spreadsheet spits out, you can pull them up and go, actually, let's go and try and get the proper pricing on this, and this. And all it does is when you're using these product research tools, which not everyone does, but when they do, it just means is that the job after, which is still got to be quite detailed after you've actually selected a product that you think you might sell, you want to speed up that dull, boring work as well, that back and forth. Because it's like when you're dealing with suppliers. You ask them some questions, they only answer a handful of them. Then you move to the next one and you keep jumping around between all of them before you start to whittle them down until that you're satisfied. So that's just my 2 pence worth there.
I work in a similar but different way. Of course, there's the initial validation where you just quickly hop on Alibaba and get a ballpark without speaking to a supplier. You just understand the price range.
Yeah.
And I have a spreadsheet for just an estimated, everything's just extremely estimated. But then I have a full-on spreadsheet for the next stage, which is, and again, it has nothing to do with being a beginner or being advanced. We all, at whatever stage we're at, when we're beginning the process with a new product, have to check the validation, to validate whether it's going to be a profitable one or not. Yeah. And the reason that I work with the RFQ quotes, the request for quote templates that I have, is so that I can grab all that different information. So I also can add a specification sheet as long as I have not done something like a dramatic change. If I've got a dramatic change that I don't want the suppliers to know about yet because I don't trust them yet, then no. But I do that so that I can get all the information that I need right now so that we can move on to the next stage. And I love Kian, but I've got to disagree with you on this part because we're dealing, right? A lot of us are dealing through Alibaba still, okay? A lot of us, right? You're at a different level, it's not that you're just in a different stage, basically. Being physically in China, it's not the same as dealing with Alibaba. And Alibaba works in a way where that's the way that the suppliers work. Alibaba has its own RFQ form, right? That thousands of people use. And I don't know if you've used it, but I've used it. When you use it on Alibaba, basically all these different suppliers get back to you and you can see all the data one next to the other and you choose who to move the next stage, who to move on to the next stage with, and then you start building that relationship. The difference here is, how can I start building a relationship with 6, 7, 10 different suppliers when for let's say 4 products at the same time, when I don't yet know which one I'm going to work with, right? I need to get the information first. On the RFQ form, I'm also asking the question, can you do the packaging for me? Or do I need to, do you guys maybe not everyone does packaging. Do I need to go outsource that? How far away are you from the port? Do you actually do the insert cards, or do I need to go get someone else? Maybe they're going to be cheaper, but I can find a supplier that's closer to the port that also can do the packaging. It's like a one-stop shop, right? They do the packaging, they do the inserts, they do everything, etc. And I can find it all out, asking that in a template. And I get what Kian's saying, because he's we're all about building relationships, but I just feel a little bit that the Alibaba place-based suppliers, which are, a lot of them are still the same type of suppliers that are at the Canton Fair.
Cool.
Yeah,
right. So you've got your point across there. Kian, why do you oppose it? That's good, because you need the yin and the yang.
Yeah. No, first of all, I completely agree with Sharon. And kind of what I was saying at the beginning is that this is a different journey depending on where you're at in your business. And I think Sharon's more talking about the product validation stage, and I'm just talking about the outreach to the supplier once you know what you want. Yeah. So, and like I said, it's the RFQ. RFQs is absolutely fine, and you absolutely should use them. And beginner, intermediates, and advanced use RFQs as well. I'm not saying only beginners use it, but from my understanding, speaking to suppliers, they feel that the people who reach out using RFQs are majority of them are beginners, because that's just how people who have been trained to come through courses, that's how they operate. Whereas the more intermediate to advanced people are the ones who have basically already built up relationships, know what they want, they know how to ask for things. So you might be an advanced seller and still use an RFQ, and that's fine. But I just mean the sort of the tone that sort of sends, and it's absolutely fine to use it as well. I just want to reiterate that. If you're trying to validate a product, but once you know what you want, then you have a different outreach method. So both ways are right, but I'm not saying that one of us is right or wrong,
Yeah.
There is no right or wrong, it's just different methods. But my question is,
Yeah.
if you've now got someone who's let's just say, Ken, like someone's now wanting to bring out a new product, right? As in, like they don't know the numbers yet. They've just got an idea, right? They've got an idea to sell a product online. So, like, what's step one?
So the thing is, it depends, like if it's a standardized product or something that you want to customize. But obviously step one, obviously not being able to go to China, is to go through Alibaba, find the relevant suppliers, reach out to them. But like in the initial reach out, I would probably even avoid the RFQ altogether. Like I sort of, rather than looking for the products, I'm just looking for the right suppliers. And I've sort of got a process for that, which I've got a YouTube video on. But then once you figure out, right, who's the right supplier I need to work with, then I'm just going to get them on WeChat. And then I'm going to, well, I might send an initial message through Alibaba, but then I'll get them on WeChat. I'll either send them voice messages or I'll send them a call through there and be like, yo, this is what I'm looking for. This is how I normally operate. And then it's like you've immediately just gone straight to that communication phase. And because I'm trying to get myself out of that Alibaba communication as fast as possible, because I don't want to be put in the same bracket as everyone else, if you know what I mean. I want the supplier to sort of respect where I'm coming from. So I kind of just want to get that conversation going as fast as possible off of Alibaba. But that's
straight
not
onto
good
WeChat
advice for
or email.
Yeah, but that's not good advice for beginners, because beginners have to follow the template of, right, I need to pay my supplier through trade assurance. I need to be protected. I don't know if I can trust these people yet, but I can sort of tell in the first 10 seconds if this is a supplier I want to work with. But if you're a beginner, you have to go through that protected service to make sure you don't get scammed or get your fingers burned or anything like that. So what I'm saying is there's just like different stages to it wherever you're at in your business, and all of them are okay. You just have to know where you are in that journey.
Cool. So we've established that part now. Where are we going next with the conversation?
So one thing I would say is that, like, obviously we're stuck in this time where we have to communicate online, but the best advice and emphasis I can give, if you really want to get the best results, is to go to China, go to the Canton Fair and things like that. But we don't know when that will be. So this is kind of our best alternative. But I would just want to make it known and make it clear that that is the next stage if you want to interact face to face and then take that to the next level.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Danny, can I say what my process would have been?
Of course, yeah.
So my process would have been, if I've got a new product now that I want to move on to the next step with, number one, I would have gone, and I do the same thing. I go on Alibaba and I don't look for products. I look for the suppliers through typing the product. And then I would have made myself like a list of as many suppliers as fit the criteria that I have. And then I would have sent out an email, like a contacted everyone at the same time, just going to see who's getting back to me. Once they get back to me, I would have had an initial email, and then the next people, the ones that actually get back to me, then I would have sent out the RFQ, and that would have been attached to a specification sheet. After that, I would have then moved on to WeChat, and I also obviously like speak to my suppliers.
Do you not ever reverse engineer your competitors' supply chain and then contact them for quotes? Because you know the quality is going to be
through that.
So you're selling product A, right? And then you get, like, I don't use the sites now, but I used to pay someone to basically go and do look them up. I think Jungle Scout has it in their tool now, don't they? What's it called? Where you can pull up all the bond information and stuff for US imports and stuff. Obviously, that's made for the US.
Panjiva. I don't work that way.
Panjiva,
yeah. I don't work that way.
No, I'm just saying it's another way that it can be dealt with, is the fact that you want good quality products. And if you know that they've had numerous shipments that have gone through the inspections and everything else, sometimes it's a good place to start instead of the maze that is Alibaba and starting to filter down out through the rubbish. I know you got to do the filtering yourself, but if there is someone who's shown a consistency in quality.
But sometimes we've spoken about inspections in the past, and I do a factory audit with every new factory. It costs like $250. And I do different types of inspections with my inspection company. And I've found this, and I think that Ken will agree with me on this one, is that sometimes you'll find a supplier who maybe doesn't make the type of product that you want, but they make very similar products, but they have all the tools and all the machines that they can still make the product that you need. And they maybe don't make that product for someone else who sells on Amazon, but to me, that's a plus. I don't want necessarily the exact same supplier that everyone else has. I want to have my own supplier where I can do something different, and know that they're not going to, no matter how much, Kian and I don't always agree on this, but I don't trust suppliers ever 100%, right? I trust my suppliers like 95%, right? Kian's laughing.
Well, we always have this conversation, don't we? It always gets covered. We know.
I also here's the thing. I work in a way where if my supplier tells me something about my competitor, they're telling my competitors about me, right? I know that my suppliers don't tell me stuff about my competitors, because in that way I know that I can trust them, that they're not telling others. But I would love to be able to work with a supplier that isn't supplying to all my competitors online, on Amazon specifically. And it's also depends on the product, whether it's like a copy paste. I don't sell copy pasted products, and I also don't think people should sell copy pasted products. I customize everything. But Kian, it would be interesting to see what you have to say on this one.
Yeah, well, actually, going back to Danny's first point about reverse engineering it and using like Jungle Scout and Panjiva to find a supplier directly, it's important to note that that's only like half the battle. That you can still can find out the supplier's name and who they manufacture for, but then the challenging thing is that like connecting with them, introducing yourselves to them, and making them want to work with you. Yeah, because it's like, if let's say for example you're a beginner and you want to make like, I don't know, water bottles, and you're going after like Yeti, the manufacturer who makes for Yeti. Well, that manufacturer makes for Yeti is doing like maybe $30-40 million turnover a year, and they're not necessarily interested in your first order of like 500 pieces. They're just not interested. So like, if I think it's a good tool to use if you have leverage, and if you also feel like you're going to bring big orders and they're not supplying like the Nikes and the Adidas of the world, you know, then it's a good tool. But yeah. And then, you know, to Sharon's point on like supplier relationships and stuff, like I fully trust and very open book and all that with my suppliers, but because I've met them many times, I've gone to visit them, we've had dinner together, all that sort of stuff. But if I was just communicating through Alibaba and I hadn't met them before, then for sure, like there's a lot of work to do before we can sort of open up that trust. But I just make it, it's like a foundation for me to go and visit before like I place an order, whether that's in the fair or in the factory directly. So unless it's an emergency situation, they'll be placing an order with someone I've never met before. But that's just why I value so much in trust. And it's like anywhere or anything in life. It's not just like Chinese are trustworthy or not trustworthy. It's the same if you deal with anyone from any part of the world. You're going to find very honorable people and very dishonorable people. And it's just, you have to have like processes and systems for weeding out the bad and just working with the good.
But what do you think, Ken, about finding factories that maybe don't make something for everyone else, but you know that like you've validated them as a good factory, and they can still make what you need? Do you get what I mean? Like, do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Sure.
Maybe
No. I do that as well. So like sometimes I go to suppliers, and I had this example with like, you know, the fabric roll is like 1.5 meters wide. And we were making backpacks, and the width of the backpack was, I don't know, 40 centimeters. And it came to like the last sort of like 10 or 15 centimeters, which were just wasted because the width wasn't enough. And I said to the factory, what are you doing with all this like wasted fabric on the end? And they're like, oh, we'll just throw it out. I was like, well, wait a second, because we also make like wallets with the same material that we use for the backpack, 600D polyester. And I trained the factory how to make a wallet. I got them a sample, and I basically sat down with them and I showed them how we make it. And then they were like, okay, cool, we make wallets now. And they never did before, but I got the material for free because they were going to throw it out. So I just showed them how to make something. They figured it out very quickly, and then that was that. So you can definitely like engineer products with factories, because that's what they're good at, like product development. They're good at making stuff. So by all means, if they have the equipment and the workforce, then by all means they can do that. And it's great because then they're not supplying your competitors, as you said, Sharon.
Cool. What about leading questions and supplier qualifications?
Yeah, good point. I mean, I think again, there's a difference if you're in the validation process, and then if you're like, I know I need to order this product. And so like my sort of like initial questions are like, which markets do you supply, and as well as which markets, like which countries specifically. And then because you want to know where their attention is going. Like if they're supplying the USA market, then they're compliant with all the regulations that you need. And then like, again, like what certificates do you have for your product? Have you tested it? And then if they supply your market and they have the right certificates, and it's like, okay, great, this is a good partner I can work with. And then on top of that, I like to ask, you know, which retailers have you worked with? Because if you're working with like a Walmart or a Target or a Bed Bath & Beyond, well, then they're capable of doing very high volume orders. And they're also like, their facilities have been tested, because none of these big retailers place orders to factories unless they were basically worthwhile to manufacture, that they've had all their audits and certificates in terms of like it's got adequate lighting in the factory, there's no underage labor, all that sort of stuff. So you can sleep at night knowing you're sourcing from a good factory. And then on top of that as well, it's sorry, I lost my train of thought. Sharon, you want to jump in? I just had a brain freeze.
Well, while you're having the brain freeze,
Yeah,
I was going to bring in John Miller says, totally agree with Sharon. We started using our competitor supplier by coincidence only, but have been working hard to get away from them. But I have to say it's not easy because they have all the products in our lineup already designed and ready to go. So it goes part of the thing when I was talking about Panjiva, reverse engineering, not working with your competitors' factories. So John Miller made a good point. Though what I will add is the Panjiva thing can work. It goes back again. If you're trying to get that target price and you want to titrate up and down, if you've got the data to hand and a handful of factories that sell the product, the type of product you want to sell, you can get a better idea than just guessing it on Alibaba, because that information generally is wrong and out of date. But like you said, you may not use them as a factory. They might just be used as a source for data collection, for information gathering around the product.
Yeah. So yeah, for sure. I mean, so essentially, like you just really want to educate yourself on the capabilities of the manufacturer, and kind of what Sharon said before, like, what's your address, like how close are you to the port, and also like how many workers have you got in your factory. And there's no like right or wrong answer. You just want to know the size of the operation that you're dealing with, because I've worked with some factories which have got 50 employees, and I've worked with some factories which have got 2,000 employees, and both are good depending on what you want out of that particular order or that situation. Because the one with the low number of workers will be very flexible to your needs. They'll do a low MOQ, they'll let you trial different colors, whereas the one with the high number of workers will be very, very systemized in how they do business, and they'll be able to manufacture very, very fast, but they're not going to mess around with like low MOQs or anything like that. So, and it's the same with like, finding out if they're a trading company or if they're a factory. Again, it's cool to work with either, but you want to know exactly who you're working with, because working with the factory directly, they're a lot more likely to lend you credit. Whereas working with a trading company, they might have access to a wider network of factories. So if you want like more products, they're able to get that for you very quickly without you having to talk to loads of different factories. So it's really just like ticking as many boxes as possible of knowing who you're working with. And then once you know what their capabilities are, then you know how to operate with that factory. Because even like, one of the most important things to find out is what testing they've done on their product. But if they've never done any testing, or if they've never done an audit on their factory, that doesn't mean you shouldn't work with them, because they can still do it and they're capable of passing. But you just need to know that, okay, that's something you have to go through before you place your order. So, yeah.
Alan says here, Kian mentioned he can tell in the first 10 seconds if a supplier is reliable. What does he look in them for when he's making that decision?
That's a great question. And when I say that, I mean like when I'm sort of interacting with them like face to face in the fair. And like the best way I can describe it, right, is that like, if like you're on a date with a girl and you can sort of tell when you're at the bar having a drink with her, you can tell if she's like interested, and like from like body language and stuff like that. Well, that's kind of how I feel with like suppliers and stuff. Like, by the way like they operate, by their body language, the way they communicate, the way they
show
talk
you a
about
bit of ankle. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm joking.
If they've got 2 buttons undone or 3, it's that sort of stuff. Like, are they knowledgeable about their product? Are they knowledgeable about this market? Are they knowledgeable about your competitors? Or are they just trying to sell you something? And it's like those sort of things you can tell immediately, like, okay, this is a waste of time. Like if you're like doing like lighting products and the latest like CE 4972 certificate just came out a few months ago, and if you're like, are you compliant with CE 4972? And if they're like, look at you blankly, like, what's that? Then you're like, well, they clearly don't know what's going on in the market. It's things like that the right questions to ask, and immediately you can tell if they're in tune. And obviously, like, don't get me wrong, sometimes you can talk to a sales staff or a sales assistant, which is a brand new beginner, which doesn't know what's going on. Yeah. She's just learning the job. But if you're speaking with a manager and someone who's worked in that factory for many years, because here's one thing, like, the Chinese don't like to say no. If you're like, can you do this? They're like, yeah, no problem. And you'll find out later on if they can do it or not. But they'll never just be like straight up and be like, no, actually, that's not something we specialize in. I suggest you go down that way and you'll find a really good supplier for it. Of course, they're going to tell you can do it, because they might even outsource your order to another factory and claim a margin on top of that. But it starts with you being knowledgeable of what you're trying to purchase. And once you know what you're looking for, you can tell if they know what they're doing very, very quickly.
But you know what, just to jump in that point there, when you start on a product, a lot of times there's a lot of knowledge gap that you are missing because they ask you those questions, right? So as you're going round all these different factories and whittling down, you start to having to learn and think on the spot. Oh, I haven't thought about that. I haven't thought about that. I haven't thought about that. And then that starts to build your knowledge. And the point it's going to get to is that suddenly you knowledge up, and then you go to a different factory, and then you show your knowledge to a point because you've gathered that knowledge from all the other places. Yeah.
Exactly, and that's exactly what I was going to say as well. In that, like, if I'm trying to source something that I don't have much experience in and I've not done before, well, what I'll do is I'll go on somewhere like Alibaba and I'll find like who are the bad suppliers, who are the ones I don't want to work with. Maybe these are suppliers who've only been in operation for a couple of years, they don't have any testing, whatever. And I'll ask all my quote unquote stupid questions to those guys to be like, hey, what specifications are normally in the US market, or like what size of product you do for the US compared to the UK. And then like I'll gather my information from the suppliers that I know I don't want to work with. And then once I've educated myself, then I'll find the suppliers that I know are very reputable in that space. And then I'll go to them and be like, hey, I need this baby product, which has to be this size, which needs to be this material, which is going to pass this test. And they're going to be like, all right, cool. This guy clearly knows what he's doing here. But I just learned that from the bad suppliers, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. Sharon, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think that we need to remember that not all of us fly to China, right? A lot of us are still dealing with online. I am someone who it's really difficult to bullshit me. It's really difficult to pitch to me. I'm difficult when it comes to that kind of stuff. I'm very open about my faults and about the difficult things about me, but I think that even for me, and I can tell who someone is within a second, I think, it'll take me a little bit longer when I'm dealing with a Chinese supplier. But I can give you an example how Kian said stuff that you asked. We asked a supplier once, are you willing to sign an NNN agreement? And then they answered me, do you mean an NDA? And I was like, no, I mean an NNN, because NDAs don't work in China. And straight away, I thought that they were just basically like scamming me, like full of shit. When really she'd only been working there for something like, I think it was like a week or something. She was still new. And I was ready to be like, okay, we can't work with this factory, because like she was trying to get us to get an NDA signed instead of an NNN when I can't remember who it was. This was quite a while ago, but somebody, I think it was the big boss, stepped in because they realized that they were about to lose us. And I was like, yeah, because I asked to sign an NNN and you guys are telling me to do an NDA. Or like, what are you trying to fool me? Do I look like an idiot to you? You know, like it. So I was very quickly about to be like, scam, but it wasn't. It was just that she was newer, and we actually work with the supplier today. So sometimes even I have to go through some sort of interaction with a supplier before I can 100% know whether they are or they aren't full of shit, basically.
Yeah. So when you go to China, Sharon?
Well, not anytime soon, because China, I'm not going in, not now. I mean, I really wanted to be there this year, but I'm not going in there probably for the next 12 months. So there's like a, deadly virus in the world.
Kian's trying to get a word in here. What do you want to say, Kian?
No. So obviously everyone knows that I do a lot of my business in China, but what I also wanted to add is that like everything we just talked about, about like asking your questions to the bad suppliers first, that's all you're still fully capable of doing that online. Like that's just the way.
That's specifically, of course. I was saying that about when that guy asked you, how do you know if someone's within 10 seconds? You can't actually know within 10 seconds online whether they're full of shit or not. You have to go through a process.
Get them on a WeChat call. Yeah,
unless you get them on a WeChat call. I mean, I wouldn't get on a WeChat call from the very beginning with like 10, 12 different people, right? Like we're talking about, we had to go through some sort of process to get to that, right? Before we
do a group call, just have them all on at once.
At the same time. Yeah.
All right, you're disqualified. Yeah. Cool. Get them on Zoom.
I can add about the like some of the things that are important to me when I'm speaking with a supplier. Kian spoke about some things. One of the this is like a make or break for me. One of the first things I ask is, do you accept an inspection? Right? Mm-hmm. If they do not allow me to come to have a factory audit, or they don't allow me to have inspections done, then that is already like That is one of the first things. That's a
one
make or break.
So
that's a make or
there's
break.
There's no romance. There's no dining or anything. You go straight in.
I don't want it straight away. I just want to make sure. I always use this as the example, right? Like I think I've spoken about it a few times. Like 3 years ago, we were thinking, when the jade rollers just became a thing, we were thinking about adding it to our beauty brand. And I have like 7 jade rollers in my house because I had heaps of samples. And no one was willing to get an inspection apart from one. And I later realized it because they were arriving broken. Today, they found different ways of doing it. And this necessarily isn't data, blah, blah, blah. But the fact that no one was allowing us to get an inspection done, first of all, some of them were actually trading companies. But apart from that, it was because there was an issue with the product. And you can see all the reviews from 3 years ago for jade rollers. They were all arriving broken. That, to me, things like that, and also if they're not willing to get me to have a factory audit, something's wrong. There's something not right with it. So that's one of the things that.
Well, you just mentioned trading companies there. Cybees, the problem is only going to Alibaba is that you cannot really tell or what you're dealing with there. So many trading companies claim to be a factory. Kian, question for you. Why don't you pick that apart? Because we've covered this previously on the show. You got pertinent questions you ask here.
Sure. I mean, so first of all, a lot of, as we talked earlier, right, trading companies, it's okay to work with them, but you just have to know who you're working with. But second of all, bear in mind from the factory's point of view, like there's this preconceived notion that factories give a better price and trading companies are more expensive. So all the trading companies assume that everyone just wants to work with factories. So a lot of them just lie and say that they are a factory, not because they want to be dishonest, but they're scared they're going to lose your order if you find out that they're a trading company. Now, we just have to become like aware that it's okay to work with trading companies, and they have to be aware that it's okay to be honest that you are a trading company. But that's where like the sort of miscommunication lies. And the quick way you can find out on Alibaba if they're a trading company or a factory is that if you go on their supplier profile page and you go to contact, they'll have an address. And if the address is a 29th floor in some business district, then you know it's a trading company. But a factory will say like industrial zone. And then you know that, okay, they're actually in an industrial zone. And you can actually copy and paste that address, put it into Google Maps, and actually see where they're located. And bear in mind that some factories also have like a city center location. So they might have 2 addresses. And what you can do in that case is that click on the factory's profile, click on their test certificates, and on the test certificate, it will have the address of where the test was carried out, or where the factory was inspected, or where the product was inspected. And as long as that address is the industrial estate and that matches the address that they have in their profile, then you know that they are a factory. So you can tell by just digging a little bit deeper, but you should also put them at ease to say, hey, if you're a trading company, I don't mind. I'll still work with you. I just need to know who I'm working with. And that way they'll be like more transparent with you.
Yeah. And the other thing is disparate products as well. When you go and look and you see they have all these weird and wonderful range, like there's just nothing is congruent there. You know, that's a trading company as well. The other thing as well is that you can have great trading companies. I've dealt with them in the past, and a lot of it also comes down to they don't have the budget to have a full-time member of staff at the factory that speaks English or good enough English as well. That's the other thing. Obviously there's an adjustment in terms of pricing, but if you can make the numbers work and you have a good relationship and they deliver, why not if everyone's making money? But lo and behold, most people want to work direct with factory, don't they?
Exactly. And the most important thing is you're happy with your product and your price. And if you get your samples, it doesn't matter where it came from, as long as you're happy with your product and your price. And also bear in mind that like business internally in China can be a little bit complicated. Like I know factories owners, which their brother has a trading company, and they also work with other factories, and like sisters and aunts have ownerships in trading companies and factories. So it's all kind of connected. Like even like schoolmates and classmates go 50-50 on investment in a factory, but they started in a trading company. So there's so many different types of connections that people have. So don't just assume because they're a trading company that they're not able to give you the best price.
Indeed. You can on Alibaba, because what was it, Sabi, I think it was, asked about the Alibaba question. You can check when you click on verified supplier on Alibaba. If they're verified, it means that they would have gone through a factory audit through Alibaba's inspection companies, and it tells you whether they're a trading company or a manufacturer. Apart from that, when you have your own audit done, you will know whether they're a factory or whether it's an actual manufacturer or a trading company. And sometimes they may be both a trading company and a manufacturer. And regarding the building thing, I used to say the same thing, but over the years, I've also understood that sometimes they may be both a trading company and a manufacturer, and they're actually sitting in a specific in a building, but their factory is actually in a different province that's like 6 hours, 10 hours away from them, and which is also sometimes closer to a port, and that's actually their factory. One of the things I ask is like, where is the product actually going to be picked up from? Because not always is it the same place where the person I'm speaking to, like my point of contact, they're not always in the same place. And we also need to remember that sometimes they really are manufacturers, but they may just not have an export license. So, and then they're put on as a trading company. So what Kian is saying, like, I agree with it 100%. Trading companies aren't, like, sometimes trading companies are actually going to get you even a better price than a manufacturer because they've got that buyer leverage because they may be working with more than one type of client. I think we've just made a really bad name for trading companies. And I just think that it really depends on many things. It depends on different things.
Yeah, I think the trading company thing was not now, but courses from years ago. You know, it's always trading is a bad thing, and you've got to negotiate hard. So there are some bad habits that over time don't actually appear. You know, it doesn't work necessarily today what worked a few years ago. And so what happens is someone gets told something and they all follow suit that way, but it doesn't mean that is the best way or the only way of doing it. If we're going to wrap here, because I want to talk to the audience about what we discussed before about bringing on an Amazon seller. So I just want to promote that now. So for next week, on Tuesday's show next week, what we're going to do is we're going to open up a segment on the show where we will invite an Amazon seller on, and then the Amazon sellers tells us all about the problems with their business, and we will try and help them as best as possible, give them feedback and advice, everything from product selection, issues with, you know, what Kian can cover, Sharon can cover. I will cover some PPC ranking stuff as well. And I might bring one other on. So putting out there to the audience now, you've got to be doing 6 figures or above, actively pursuing getting more and launching more products, and Amazon's your full-time gig. You don't have to reveal your products. We're basically coming on the show. So almost like instead of going and doing a coaching call with someone, you've got feedback from everyone on the call in ways to help improve your business. And what happens is the audience benefits because those questions that we may not ask when people are listening will be able to answer other people's questions as well. So that will be a new segment starting next week. Are you in, Kian?
All in.
Yeah, because me and Sharon went behind your back and we were talking about it earlier on today. So
I already told him.
Excellent.
I already told him about it.
Right, so let's do a top down. What's the key things to take away from today's show?
Number one, I think that is really important that I just wanted to add when you guys were saying before is because there's a million courses out there, and I think this is also part of what Kian was saying, but he didn't say it specifically. We all have different templates, and a lot of us share our templates and our things with our following. I just want to make it clear, I'm not one of those like course guru people. But anyway, because they all exist, what happens is a lot of people in this world are not creative, and they don't actually take whatever, like a template, and change it. They just copy paste. And then like thousands of suppliers, not thousands, but you get what I mean, are getting the exact same template, right? And I think it was like with one specific course, it was happening as well. I'm not going to say what it was. So I think the first thing is if you're going to use a specific template, change it to make it for your business and for your product. Don't just copy paste like everyone else, because what if somebody else also, right, is using that exact same one? And that is when you're going to look like a typical beginner, which is what Kian was kind of saying earlier, and you may not be taken seriously. So that's one thing I think is important for people as well. Like, don't be a copycat and make your own thing and learn your own way to communicate with suppliers as well.
Indeed. Elliot made a good point. Trading companies are good if your products do not require customization. However, and if you need customization, it's better to communicate directly with the factory to avoid key points being miscommunicated by the middlewoman. Valid point there. What other points are we taken away from today? So we've covered RFQs.
Kian's dying to say something, Danny. He's dying to say something.
No. Danny, you go for it. I'll close it.
No, I was going to say we've got RFQs, covering all your bases to validate your ideas, supplier qualification, and leading questions, and show how to your experience to pique their interest. So they're definitely key things about historically, like what we said, going back to the suppliers that you want to work with, learn from those you don't necessarily want to work with to up your knowledge is going to be a key role here. We know request for quotes, however you want to term it, you could do them, you don't do them, it's entirely up to you how you do it. You work how you feel comfortable. Ultimately, the goal is to get the right information from them, so people are going to work differently there. What other key points before we go?
Yeah, I would say like number one, know where you're at in your business, whether you're at validation stage or if you're actually at, you know what you want to purchase stage. Then after that, make a personal approach, and whether that's with or without an RFQ, I would still try to do a personal approach so you differentiate yourself from the pack. Then educate yourself on the product before asking and before negotiating, so you have the most amount of leverage. Then after that, you want to really focus on building the relationship with that supplier to get the best terms and then to negotiate. And finally, and probably the most important thing, is I would say that you should subscribe to the Sourcing with Kian YouTube channel, and also
Go on, my son, you plug it.
Sharon Evans' YouTube channel as well, and that will keep you guys right.
Yeah, cool. Or stay here. Or stay here at Seller Sessions every day.
Our YouTube channel with Danny's Seller Sessions will have you guys.
Exactly. It's a three-way combo. Jab, right.
Totally.
Cool. Harvey said, is there a replay of this? Yes, there is. And there also go to sellersessions.com, and then you'll go get all the back episodes there. Guys, thank you so much for joining me today. I'll see you again here next Tuesday with our new format where we're going to bring in some Amazon sellers. That's, of course, if they're up for it. I'm not sure people may be up for it. We might not get any requests. So if you do,
I think you'll be all right.
I reckon there'll be a few. Yeah. So the best way to do that is danny@sellersessions.com. Send over some information there. We can chat there, or inbox me here on Facebook. And I'll see you guys next week. I'll be back here 4 p.m. BST tomorrow. Go on. Sorry.
Are you going to just have one seller? Or are you going to have like several sellers on in that episode?
No, one seller per episode. But the idea is I want these guys to come with at least 15, 20 questions that they have around their business, so that we can have a deep dive into that and help them that way. And then have a series week after week where we bring on a seller and then go through the same thing again.
Awesome.
Was that your brother in the background, Ken?
Yeah, he's going past your window.
No, I've got a few. I've got the warehouse back there as well. I could give you a tour if my camera wasn't so hazy.
All right, I'm going to sign off then. See you tomorrow, 4 p.m. BST. Take care. Stay home, stay safe, look after your family. Goodbye.
Bye.